Hello everyone, today we'll be making Hello Kitty cherry blossom cookies. For the cookie, roll out your favorite rolled sugar cookie recipe. Then get a Hello Kitty cookie cutter or a template of Hello Kitty's face and cut out the face shape from the dough. Bake the cookies and allow them to cool on a cooling rack. Ensure that the cookies have thoroughly cooled before decorating with the icing. For the cherry blossoms, roll out pink fondant and take a flower-shaped gum paste cutter and just cut away the flowers. Make both small and large cherry blossoms. Once those are completed, add pink luster dust to a bowl, add the cherry blossoms, and just shake them around until all of the blossoms are fully covered with the pink luster dust. And then you're finished with your cherry blossoms. To make the icing, combine 4 cups of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of meringue powder, and 5 tablespoons of water. Begin mixing on low speed, then switch to high speed and continue mixing until a paste has formed. The consistency will be stiff and thick, like spackle. To prepare the icing, take the icing base, a bowl, some water, and a container for the icing. Now take some of the icing base and scoop it into the bowl. Next, take some water and mix it into the icing. Continue mixing and adding water until the icing turns smooth and soft. Once it gets to this point, test the consistency of the icing by dipping in the spatula and count how many seconds it takes for the peak to melt back down into the icing. A 15-second consistency is what we'll be using for everything except for flooding the face. For that, we'll be using a 5-second consistency. Add in the food coloring and continue to mix until thoroughly blended. Finally, take the bottle or bag and fill it with the icing. Now we're ready for the fun part of decorating the cookie. To make the Hello Kitty cherry blossom cookie, we'll be using a cookie of Hello Kitty's face, a template of her face, yellow and black edible markers, royal icing in pink, royal icing in white with the number 3 tip, royal icing in white again with the number 16 tip, yellow royal icing with the number 2 tip, and black with the number 2 tip. We also have cherry blossom sprinkles in 2 sizes, a pair of chopsticks, and some toothpicks. Let's get started. We're going to begin by icing the bow first and then moving to the rest of her face. If the outline of the bow isn't visible, take the original cookie cutter and use the edible marker to trace the bow onto the cookie. Tracing inside the lines will give you a smaller bow, but it'll still work. We're just going to use the imprint on the cookie. To start, take the pink royal icing and pipe the outline of the middle of the bow, which is basically a circle. Once the middle of the bow is completed, continue outlining the sides of the bow. Ensure that the beginning and ending of the outline are connected to the middle of the bow. Once the outlining is complete, we're ready to fill our bow by flooding it with icing. To flood the middle of the bow, take the pink icing and pipe it along the outline, ensuring that it touches. Keep swirling it in. If there are any open areas, take a toothpick and spread the icing around to ensure that the entire center of the bow is filled. Continue using the same process to flood in the sides of the bow. When flooding in the sides, be sure to stay within the outline. Otherwise, the icing may flow into the middle of the bow. Once the bow is completed, we're ready to move on to outlining and flooding the ear. For the ear, take the white icing with the number 3 tip and outline the ear. The outline of the ear should touch the outline of the bow. Once the outline is completed, flood in the ear with the white icing. Be sure to fill the small corner of the ear by getting a toothpick and spreading the icing. Using the same white icing with the number 3 tip, carefully pipe in the outline of Hello Kitty's face. Be sure to leave a little space between the outline of the icing and the edge of the cookie. If the icing is piped too close to the edge, it may drip off. Now take the white icing with the number 16 tip and flood in the inside of Hello Kitty's face. Be careful when outlining the edge of the bow, because the white icing may go onto the pink bow. It's better to keep a small space in between and fill it in with the toothpick. With the rest of the face, generously pipe in the white icing until the face is completely filled, with each line touching one another. Go as fast as possible because the icing will dry pretty fast. If there are any empty spaces, fill it in with the white icing. For the areas next to the bow that didn't quite get filled, use a toothpick to spread the icing out. Once the face is completely filled, allow the icing on the cookie to completely dry. Once the icing has dried, redo the bow to add a 3D dimension to the cookie. Use the pink icing to outline and flood the bow once again. Once the middle is completed, allow the icing to slightly dry, just enough to form a crust. By allowing the icing to dry, it'll form what looks to be a seam around the middle of the bow, separating it from the two sides. Outline and flood the sides of the bow and allow them to crust. Once the bow has set, take the template of Hello Kitty's face and place it over the cookie. Use the black edible marker to trace the outline of both Hello Kitty's eyes onto the cookie. For the whiskers, just place dots for where the whiskers will be drawn. Next, take the yellow edible marker and mark the nose. Now take the black icing and outline and flood in both of the eyes. Next, take the yellow icing and outline and flood in Hello Kitty's yellow nose. Now we're going to move to making the crease of Hello Kitty's bow. Use the pink icing and form a C or a U on the bottom of one of the sides of the bow. Fill in the C or U shape. Do the same on the other side of the bow. They should connect to the middle of the bow. Finally, take the black icing and draw a line about a ½ inch long from the inside of Hello Kitty's face to the outside marking. Do the same on both sides. You can also do it the other way around, from the outside of the marking towards the inside of her face. Double check to make sure that the whiskers are even. And now we're finally finished with Hello Kitty's face. Now we're ready to add the cherry blossoms to the bow. Take 9 of the small cherry blossoms and 3 of the larger cherry blossoms. Also, dilute a small amount of the white icing to use as an adhesive for our blossoms. If you have large fingers, use the chopsticks to handle the blossoms. Start by picking up the small blossom and dipping it into the icing. Place the blossom at the bottom part of the middle of the bow. Continue to place the blossoms below each other until there are 3 in a row. For the first row, you might have to slightly curve it to avoid the eye. Continue with the second row of 3 and then the last row of 3. Once finished, we're ready to move on to the larger blossoms. Take the larger blossom, dip it into the icing, and place it on the middle of the bow to the side. Take the second blossom and place it next to the first, and finally top it off with the third blossom. And now we're ready to share our Hello Kitty cherry blossom cookies with all of our friends. What'd you think, Pinkie?